You're listening to the Drive Forward podcast. We're cruising through the latest in transportation to inspire a better tomorrow.
Welcome to the 12th episode of the Drive Forward podcast. I'm your host, Emily Jankowski. Today, we're chatting with Michel Hovan, the Federal Aviation Administration's branch manager of Airport Technology Research and Development. All right, well, welcome to the podcast, Michel. Let's go ahead and dive on in. Why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about your role as branch manager of the Federal Aviation Administration's Airport Technology Research and Development?
Okay, so thank you, Emily, for the question. And, I do appreciate the, this opportunity to talk about what we do. So first, to address your specific question, my role at, as head of the Airport Technology Research Branch, I think I also need to define a little bit what we do. So the Airport Technology Research Branch at FAA, is located in Southern New Jersey at the FAA Technical Center. The Technical Center has over 3,000 people. And to give you the context, we have 24 federal employees and about 100 contractors working for us. But also, what do we do? We actually do research for the Office of Airports, FAA's Office of Airports in Washington, D.C. FAA's Office of Airports in D.C., managing something called the AIP, Airport Improvement Program. And this is huge. That's a $3.5 billion program every year. So, and we have 1% of the budget, quite frankly. These numbers are public. I'm not disclosing anything that's secret. Our budget is like $39 million. So research for us is 1% of the AIP program. And the AIP program basically provides money to all airports across the nation, infrastructure, pavement, safety. So we do the research, for the AIP program. My role is that I'm the lead of basically a technical program called the Airport Technology Research program. So my role, like I said, I'm the lead of this technical program, and it has two main parts. It's airport safety, I repeat, and airport infrastructure. So everything on the ground. It's highly technical. It's all the research internal to FAA, and to educate people who don't fully understand what the people like me do, within a government agency, I need to expand a little bit. Besides the technical side, because I grew up as an engineer, I have 3 degrees in engineering, but my role is not so much engineering these days. Besides leading the technical aspect, I also have to defend the program to appropriations, various appropriation committees within FAA, within the DOT, and to the Congress. Okay, so that's part of my big role: defend the $39 million that we get, and what do we do with the money? And quite frankly, that's a lot of my work. Besides that, on a day-to-day basis, I work with industry. I work with something called Airport Council International. I work with Boeing. I work with Airbus. We have various international engagements. I also work a lot with universities. I work with, we have graduates from University of Illinois, but I work with, universities in California. I work with the University in Massachusetts. So it's very varied what I do. My job is never, ever boring. One last thing that I need to describe about the role is that I'm always looking for the best people. So I'm involved in recruiting the best people we can, within our federal, roster. And also I get involved with getting the best contractors that work for us. So although I grew up as an engineer, my role is extremely diverse. I lead a technical program, defend the budget, and get the best people, to act upon it on a day-to-day basis. So for someone, who might be like a young engineer, graduating from university, yes, 25, 30 years down the road, that could be in your future.
Fantastic. Well, I like what you said about basically what you're doing is a lot of work on the ground. I think a lot of people mistake that side of the FAA as well, right? Like smart vehicles, we also need smart infrastructures. So tell me a little bit about how the FAA is addressing the idea of smart airports. I know those are certainly on the path for our future.
Okay, so that's another area we get involved. So having described what I do and what my people do, everybody is taken off and landing from an airport. I assume everybody's, has done that, or at least 95% of the people on this, listen to this podcast would have done so. So, as the airplane, move around the airport, okay, you see the pavement, you see the grass, you see the light, we do all that. But it's changing. Maybe people have heard of what's called smart cities or smart everything. I think the future is taking shape for something different, and it's called smart airports. So the idea of smart airports has to do with you as a passenger should be able to get an airport, and it's a seamless, basically, right? You shouldn't have to worry about the weather. You shouldn't have to worry about whether or not everything is late. With the iPhone and the technology that has been around for about 13 years since 2007 has changed the way we handle information. It should be the same with you as a passenger to an airport. It should be so seamless. You should be able to get to the airport, go to your gate, all your bags are taken, care of, and get on your plane, not having to wait. That's the overall concept of smart airports. Again, three things that we do care a lot is efficiency. It has to be efficient. It has to have the capacity. Those airports have to be big enough to handle the volume of passengers, and mostly it has to be safe. So smart airports, like smart everything, are around the corner, where information about everything is provided in a comprehensive way, but that comes to you as a passenger and is totally seamless and makes your trip very pleasurable. That's what we're aiming for. It's not here yet, but I predict it'll be here within the next 10 years.
That's fantastic. Well, speaking of futuristic concepts, urban air mobility certainly shows the potential for urban transportation, where we're moving people through the air and similar to small air buses, kind of like how we're doing on the ground. How are you exploring this potential form of transit? And maybe even share what you think that may look like on the ground and those constant frequent trips.
So there's something new on the horizon. It's not that new, but it is new right now, more or less. It's urban air mobility. What does that mean? That means that the future of urban transportation is totally upon us, and it's totally different from what we've been experiencing the last 30 to 45 years, quite frankly. Some of you might be pilots. You take a little GA plane and you fly a little Cessna from here and there. That's one way. Or you go and fly commercial. You go to the airport, and I just described the concept of smart airports, but basically you get into a bigger airplane that you have no control, over. Urban air mobility is that, well, what's in between? What's in between is that maybe they could be little pods, that, individual people could get on, right? And they could go from point A to point B. This is new. Industry is very engaged into this. We work with NASA on this also in terms of futuristic concepts, but the future is ours and it's going to change so much. So whatever you can dream of, we are kind of looking at it. So let me take an example. Instead of you going to an airport and boarding a plane, it could be that you have a little pod that comes to your house, takes you somewhere else, if it's like regionally. Or if you want to go from the East Coast to the West Coast, you might still have to go from that little pod to a bigger airplane. But the way passengers are delivered across the airspace might be totally different. Or you can have small buses. Again, these are new concepts. However, I believe this is going to happen within the next 20 years. It's going to change. The other thing is electrification of urban air mobility, pods. And I focus on the word pods. But, doesn't have to be jet fuel, it could be electrified. So what we do, especially in my branch, we're looking at providing the right infrastructure for whatever urban air mobility is going to throw at us. Other parts of FAA are looking at, what's happening in the airspace, but we're focused solely on what's infrastructure on the ground, that will provide support for that. But again, it's changing all the time, so we stay engaged, and this is very, very exciting, quite frankly.
Absolutely. I think it could definitely be of huge use, right? I think here in the heartland, right? I think some of the closest cities to us that would be necessary, Chicago, St. Louis, they're on the East Coast. Maybe you're talking DC or New York City. So that's really exciting to hear how we could potentially be traveling in the future. Speaking of futuristic ideas like that, we've heard of companies like Amazon testing drones for last mile of delivery. I know the FAA is using drones a little bit differently in helping oversee oversee pavement inspection. Tell me a little bit about how the FAA is putting drones to work to improve safety.
All right, so we'll look at drones. I mean, that's not a technical term, but I think that's a term that everybody can understand. We call that UAS, but let's use the term drones. Drones are basically where, it's like a small urban air mobility pod where there's no people, okay, in there. It's a drone, right? And so, this is new again. It's not new, brand new, but it's new the last 10 years, definitely, in terms of getting momentum and look at what we need to do, we FAA. We look at safety. How can these drones be integrated, within the airspace and fly around the airport, into airport, out of airports in a safe manner? Safety is still our number one driver. That is definitely a big deal. Now, the drones are coming. They're already here. So I can talk about what we do around airports. Number one, we're making sure that we don't have adverse drones. Drones that basically want to take an airplane down. So I just want to mention that we're looking at that, and I cannot say more than that. But we're also looking at the positive impact of drones. So for anyone who has been to an airport and has walked on an airport pavement, it's 10,000 feet, okay, 2 miles. This is very, very far to walk. So right now, pavement inspection is done basically on foot, right? Where you look at pavement. So the idea of using drones, to go up and down the runway, that's a very appealing, idea, and we're working on that. So we're working with several universities and also companies where we're looking at how can we use drones to do pavement inspection. That's one of the areas we're looking at, but we're looking at more. I can mention another one that's very critical to us. It's obstruction analysis. For those people who live where there's a lot of woods, trees tend to grow fast. And at the end of runways, especially at general aviation airports, those trees become a serious hazard to small planes. So we do what's called obstruction analysis, where we go to the end of the runway and we try to map, how tall the trees have grown, so that basically we can mitigate, those risks. Drones again are a very good, piece of tool that we can use to do three-dimensional obstruction analysis. We have another one that I would like to mention is situational awareness at airports. Whenever you have an accident, the ARF people, aircraft, the firefighting people have basically to intervene very, very fast within 90 seconds to the place of the accident, an airplane, that collided with something else or whatever, right? Well, usually it's on the ground. Now we're looking at using those drones up in the air to provide ideal situational awareness to the responding team so that they can quickly act and go to the incident in question. So those, I just mentioned 3 examples and we have plenty more, but basically drones are here, they're coming. It's like electric cars, they're kind of here without being here, but they'll be here. So drones are coming and we're taking care of them.
That's fantastic. It kind of sounds like they're a second pair of eyes for you guys, especially neat to hear about how they're helping at the end of the runway and situations that may change over time, as well as the emergency response that they might be able to provide. It reminds me a little bit of the construction process that industry is using now to monitor construction sites and builds and checking things out. So certainly of use for a lot of different areas of engineering. That's fantastic. Well, one more question for you. What do you hope your legacy is at the Federal Aviation Administration?
Well, my legacy is actually because I'm no spring chicken anymore. My legacy is that I know that we've grown the program. I've grown the program. My legacy is that we have a core of people, highly dedicated federal employees, supported by contractors. That I wouldn't say they work for fun, but it's not a chore for them to work. My legacy is that I've created a great environment, for technical people and non-technical people to come and work so that every day they feel they make a big difference. That's what I hope my legacy will be.
That's great. Thank you so much, Michel. That's all I had for today. I hope I speak on behalf of all of our listeners in saying that we really appreciate all the work that you are doing, as well as all of the work that the Federal Aviation Administration is doing. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. And listeners, thank you for staying tuned in.
The Drive Forward podcast is a production of Illinois Center for Transportation, a research center of the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. We invite you to subscribe to the Drive Forward podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, or Spotify. And while you're there, feel free to like or rate us. Thanks for listening. Keep the conversation rolling by using the hashtag Drive Forward.